Hello and welcome all to this painting tutorial, whatever you want to call it. I've been on Instagram for a while now, but I've been getting a lot of questions and comments of, hey, I want, you show me how you do that or how do you get stuff done so fast. So decided to make a couple videos, show you guys how I do. I don't really want to do painting tutorials a whole lot. I do want to get into a lot of 3D modeling, 3D design, building your games to actually have real representation on the table, and then also working with the DM side, how you can make your game more realistic, more real, incorporating some stuff that really will throw players for a loop, making magic items, creating your own monsters, creating cities, a lot of homebrew stuff, and then also supplementing your games from other tabletop providers. So stick around. We're going to go through it. We've got two cameras here so you can see what I'm doing live. And so if you're wondering why I keep on looking straight ahead, screen is this way, you're up here. But it's how I like it, and go from there. Hit me up in the comments, in the stream, what you want to see. If you have questions, I'll talk about anything. I don't really care. I tend to listen to audiobooks while I paint, so that also is going to be going on in my head. So I start randomly laughing about stuff. I'm listening to The Martian on Audible. I've already read the book a couple times, but the readers are great. It's not a paid advertisement or like that. It's what I like. So let's get into it. So first thing you want to do for tiles, I'll give you an idea what we're painting today. So you can see we've got quite a bit. This is actually only one of two boxes. This is my Curse of Strahd build that I've been working on. This is mainly the tower sections. So a lot of this, I will talk about where I got a lot of this stuff from. I obviously 3D printed all of it. As you can tell, it's all in black. I always, if I can possibly make it happen, I always 3D print in black. The reason for this is that black looks best, in my opinion, with paint on top of it. If you miss a spot, it shows through. For most things, it looks good. Now, I have recently done some snow terrain for D&D. In that case, I did not want black at all. I wanted white. I didn't want the black to show through. In some areas, black's not that bad if you have stone, that kind of thing. But it just looks funky to me. So in that case, I'd prefer like a gray to print on. You can spray paint, whatever you go with, and that's what I do. If I see something very cheap, $19 for like a hatch box, that's tend to where I order my filament from. Not a paid advertisement, just that's what I found that works. I will spray it, and I use like a Krylon or spray paint, something you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's for like $3 a can. I buy it in a pack because I go through it so much. But always starting off, in my opinion, for bases, for miniatures, for terrain, everything, I paint it black first, and then I go in. And there's some techniques to that. If you have like a miniature that has chainmail on, if you have a black undercoat, and then you can just dry brush your silver, platinum, your metallic color on it, it'll actually give the rings a more defined look compared to, it's all silver and it looks like it's bumps on them rather than actual chainmail. So that's a couple techniques just to throw out there. So I'm going to put this off to the side because I don't need it directly in front of me. I need a clean area, and I'm a bit OCD when it comes to how I set things up. So I like to grab and pull. So the colors we're going to be using today, normally for a tile. So here's a completed tile, as you guys can see in the camera. Look down that way. I don't do like individual bricks. This is from Fat Dragon Games. Tom Tullis, he does a great painting tutorial, and he does I think he recommends like painting every other brick or something like that, territorial beige, like a butter pecan color. And I have done that for buildings and other things in the past. For my straight simplistic dungeon tiles, I tend not to do that because I have a I have a 4.5 foot long bin that has a couple, probably 1,000 of these in there, and painting them by hand with individual bricks, I would still be painting them, to be frank with you. But colors I recommend if you're doing the individual brick, what I do when I'm doing buildings and that kind of thing, I do like a steel gray. I'll do like a very dark or deep gray. Again, I don't want black. Ash is perfect. A cinnamon color. Territorial beige. Add it to your always have list. I buy 3 or 4 of them when I go out to get them. They're great. Like yellow ochre. And those are a couple that I use. Again, wide spectrum, grays, browns. You can throw like greens in there. Very light. Because think about it. Natural stone depends on its content. If you have obsidian in a wall, it's going to be a gloss black. Dragon glass for you Game of Thrones fans. If you have a greenish color stone, maybe it has a high copper content, and so you have the oxidation, and it's, everything that you paint tells a story. So that's kind of an idea to, like I said, you just do individual, like 1, 2, hop around, get a couple on the edges, get a couple here and there. You can do, when I've done that, 2 or 3 colors, aside from my standard gray and then my light gray. If you look at this tile, aside from the black base coat, or if you print in black, you don't have to paint a base coat. You don't have to prime it. At least I don't. You can see in the nooks and crannies, the black does show through. So I do a standard dark gray. Now, obviously, this is a lot lighter than the deep gray. So I do a standard dark gray, and then I do a regular gray on top, dry brush. And that is how I do my tiles. It's quick, it's painless. I'm going to get through that whole box in probably under an hour. Then there's some metal grates that we're going to do, and I'll show you how to do a rust color on those. Because if it's a dungeon, it's probably got water and moisture. And if it's got moisture and it's made of iron, it rusts. Again, everything tells a story. When you're painting stuff, the more detail you're adding in, you're not just, oh, well, I'm going to paint his bicep this color because why is his bicep that way? Maybe it's bruised. And then you just research what a bruise looks like, and then you paint it those colors. That's kind of how you add a lot more detail. And again, this is not, if I just painted this a solid gray, it would not, on the table, fine, whatever. But by hitting it with 2 tones, it tells more of a story. The more I want it to tell. Now, when I build a massive dungeon that is 3 stories tall and covers an entire table, trust me, my players are not going to go, oh, look, the individual bricks are covered. I use set dressings and all that stuff. That tends to take the attention away from my paint jobs for my big models. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen my Erebor build, which is an entire table of my build of Erebor from The Hobbit, Under the Misty Mountain. The dungeon tiles for that, I did a marbleized green mica copperly look to it, and there were 3 colors or 4 colors of green in that tile set. I had to sit on the ground and paint, and I used a huge paintbrush, and it still took me probably 8 hours to do. It was a lot of work, and I did it all in one go. For these, the regular tiles, the regular dungeons that I do, I have like 7 or 8 different dungeon sets that I have. My standard dungeon, the gray brick, I keep classic. And the reason also why I don't go with, I'm going to do a couple bricks, deep gray and cinnamon, and because I want to also have a consistency when I play. And the problem with that is that I'm not going to remember down the road unless I throw notes into my bins of, on these sets you did this color. You know, who knows? I mean, for instance, during COVID right now, there's a shortage of several colors. If you've gone to Michael's, Packatans, that's who we have local here, Joann Fabrics, even Walmart has paint. Everybody is short, and which is great. Everybody's painting or keeping themselves busy in the house. But if I can't get a color, for instance, territorial beige, which I use frequently, well, I mean, then I have to try and find an alternative color. And the less choices and options you have, you're trying to color match, can put you in a bad way. So, let's get into it. Enough chitter chatter. Let's get on to the pitter patter. So, what I do to paint these tiles is I use one of these. Now, if you saw that I came out of a bag, I don't buy these from like a Home Depot or a Lowe's or Joann's or your big box stores. Don't do it. You want to get these from Walmart is great. If you guys know what Harbor Freight is, we got a bunch of them around here. Harbor Freight will sell these in the boxes. They're usually used for staining. And here's the thing, I'm not using it as a brush. What I'm doing right now, if you can see, I'm carefully pulling it off of, you can throw that away. I don't need that. I have now, it's essentially a sponge. And you can go out and buy a paint sponge. I don't recommend it. It is not, you're just paying more money for something you don't need. So I ripped off a little piece. I like the sharp edge to it because it lets me get in the corners. And then I keep, with such a big brush, normally I'll have like medium and smalls that come in a pack. I will get different, I'll go with those sizes. That's why the big one remained, is because I don't generally use the big one until, but you can get a lot of use out of it. So, I'll be right back. It seems that I put my paint tray is in my office. So bear with me one sec. We will be right back and we will start painting. So I'm going to get set up real quick and we'll be right back. Alright, sorry about that, guys. So, had to go get my paint tray. As you can tell, use this a lot. Here's my smaller one. They come in sets. You can get these at your local dollar store now. They sell them. I think I got this for like an actual art store for like $3 or $4, which is kind of even high. But I have had this for years. Everything you've ever seen me paint, ever, I've used these trays for. I've never bought another set. You don't need it. If you're using acrylics, it's almost therapeutic. What I do is I sit here, there's some leftover paint, and I peel it out, and now I have a little, paint disc, and I throw it away. I don't know, it's therapeutic. It's something that tells my mind, get ready, you're going to start painting stuff. So, when I am about to paint big stuff like this, and I'm using mainly one color, I use the center ring, and I just, load it up with some paint because I'm going to go through it quickly. And some other things I do for prep work, obviously, I've got, if you guys can see, I have my water with some brushes. I was painting earlier, so I've still got a bunch of brushes that, yes, I know I should probably pull them out and clean them, but I'm lazy when it comes to that. So I just load it up. And another thing that you guys don't see, I use these rags. They're from Mainstays. It's the manufacturer. I get them at Walmart. They come in this big bundle, and they are like $3 for 15 or 10, or they're rags for, you know, your kitchen, your whatever like that, and they're great for painting. I know a lot of people like to use paper towels. Paper towels crumble, fall apart, you know, you get wet, and then they, you know, whatever. I use one of these cloths. I fold it in half, throw it on my leg. I'm always I just throw it on my leg, and that's how I clean my brushes. So, I mean, here we got a team of brushes here, and I just give it a quick swipey back and forth. Let them, you know, and then it's simple enough. It allows me to get things done pretty quick on when I'm trying to paint through, and then also for dry brushing, which is, if you don't understand what dry brushing is, we're gonna go over it. It is like it'll take you to the next level. When I first started painting miniatures, did not even have a concept of dry brushing. It was something that, you know, I've heard about it. I mean, I just didn't pay attention in art class when I was a kid. And it's just not something that, you know, really came up. I mean, I painted model cars when I was a kid, and you're, you know, trying to use an airbrush or rattle can to paint the body of the car. You don't want it to be perfectly clear, and, you know, you're not trying to get detail and that kind of stuff. And then, you know, I learned from my family members who are professional model makers, you know, and artists, this is how you do it. And wow, it just takes your work to the next level. So let's clean out this space, and we'll get to it. Some of the other colors that I have that I'm going to keep up are, I've got a nickel here. This is from Folk Art. The other two are Craft Smart. You can get this stuff at, like, Michael's is the store that, I think it's their actual line. They're like $1 or $2 a piece. Now, like, Folk Art is like $3 for a bottle, which will last you a good long while, but it is, I mean, you don't have to buy premium paint. And as I'm saying that, I have here D&D. It's from Army Painter, I believe it is. The Rust Monster color for orange, which, as you can guess, is for rust. And again, you don't need to have premium paints. I have a pumpkin orange in one of these bottles that I also use all the time to do rust when I can't find the little guy, which happens frequently. So, without further ado, so as you can tell, some of you guys might not know, but this is how some of the stuff from how I do 3D printing comes out. I like Rafts. I love them. I'm not saying you have to do it. You can go, well, JP, you're wasting a bunch of material and blah, blah, blah. I have a higher success rate because I use Rafts. There's a lot of times where I know something would have failed, and it's the raft that had like the bumps and grooves and problems, and I have less peeling up, and you can all tell me, well, it's because you're not leveling, it's because you're, you know, yada, yada, yada. I don't have to level that often because I use Rafts. And yes, does it waste a lot of, you know, material? Probably way down the road, could have printed an extra, you know, dungeon room or something like that in all the material I've wasted. But I've had far more success in the times that I stopped using. And before I started, I didn't use Rafts to begin with. Had a lot of failures and leveled, re-leveled a million times, whatever like that. Rafts work. It's something that I just do. Again, to each their own. You can tell me you're wasting material, and I'll pay for it. That's fine. It works for me. Also, it's really great when you're painting stuff. Again, I have something that I can hold up, so I'm not getting my hands covered in paint. I do not care about having my hands covered in paint, but if I can try to avoid it a little bit, I do have a pretty professional career, and you know, I get looks from other managers when I walk in, and you know, my fingers are black tipped and all that other stuff. And acrylics and stuff they come off super easy, but when I'm spray painting, That tends to be a little bit more difficult, and also I do word working and stuff like that, so I'll have stains, and that's kind of hard to get off. So, all right. So what I'm doing first is I'm getting just I try to paint in kind with all the pieces, and we just go to it. So just brush off a bit, and you can do the technique of just dabbing. You know, you can brush it on, swipe it on, whatever. It doesn't really have to be perfect. And if, you know, after... One thing about paint is there's like a saying that when you put it on, whatever color you're seeing it at when you first put it on, it's going to go a shade darker by the time it dries. I'm not saying it always does that way. Something that I want to do in the future, if I ever do a better paint management system. Currently my paint is right now residing all in a cardboard box. And I just dig through it. But I used to keep a giant Tupperware container with all my paints, and I could look down on them. But it got sacrificed to the D&D cause to put all my dungeons tiles in one of them. But what you can do is you can, when you get new bottles, crack them open, get a little bit, put a little bit on a paintbrush, and then put a line of paint on the top of the paint bottle. Then it will dry, and you'll actually be able to see what color it is. That's just an idea. If you do the old, you know, put it in a Tupperware container so you can see them all. Just an idea. So, as you can see, a couple of those already popped off. When you do a raft, if you do a raft right, it's super easy to pop them off. And again, I'm just rolling right along, getting things done. It's quick, it's painless. Now, while I'm doing this, I'll talk about these models here. These are from Thingiverse, open forged, and I apologize to the creator. I do not remember. He's got like a million models, and I printed tons of them. And when this is all done, I'll try and make sure I go and put it in the comments or of the designer. But I'm looking to run Curse of Strahd for my party in the like Halloween October period of time, and I like putting anything I say is on the table. I like to put on the table, and also I'm just a huge hobby model maker, and I like challenges, big challenges. If you've seen some of my work on Instagram, giant life-size dragon skull. Now, obviously, dragons are mythical until proven otherwise, but you know, it's pretty big. It's covers my whole wall. So, you know, I want to build something like that. So, what I decided to do is, and this is a big part of, is I want to build essentially a 28 millimeter to scale Castle von Strahd. And I mean, it's gonna present its own challenges. One of the first challenges is the towers. I could not find any models from Printable Scenery, from some of the big purveyors, Fat Dragon Games. I love those guys, both of them. I've got tons of models from both, tons of sets from both. Some of the sets we'll be painting today is from Fat Dragon Games, but I could not find just round parts that I could build a cylinder tower up. They have pre-made towers, but it's a lighthouse. It's so on and so forth. And I didn't want to go through slicing and trying to break down. I wanted something that was modular that I could pull parts off of and change them around. So that's where we got these. So I found these, and these are actually designed to be just rounded tiles for like a open forge style dungeon. But when I'm through with them, what I plan on doing is stacking them to build the towers, and they're all in different dimensions. So I do have from Fat Dragon Games a 4x4 tower, two of them in fact, and I built two of them for a previous large castle that I did for my players. What I wanted to do for this, if you've seen the pictures of Castle von Strahd, there are a number of towers. There's a large fat tower, which is, judging by my viewing, a 4x4. And then there is a 3x3 tower, and then one of these little 2x2 towers. The 2x2 is the largest of them all in height, and so hence there's going to be more tiles to that. And so that's why I have all these pieces. What I plan on doing is actually building the towers in sections instead of making these modular pieces that I can make them into corners for dungeons later on. I already have Fat Dragon game sets, and I can always print tons of corners and that kind of stuff. But I'm going to cannibalize these and make these always permanent towers, or tower portions. So, and that'll come later in future videos or in stuff like that. So again, I'm not going super light, or I just want a decent coat. I don't care if black shows through. Again, it's black is a natural color. In nature, there's not anything wrong with being able to see it. This is you'll get your fingers dirty. I mean, it's not usually whenever I do these, I have whatever color, gray, black, blue, green. My finger is heavily coated in that color for a long time. It will, as you use a sponge brush, it'll leak through onto your finger over and over again, which is fine. Who cares? It's just paint, and it's acrylic at that. So, I mean, some painters, you might hear from this. I don't do this too frequently, but some painters who are trying to get a point on their brush will lick it. Put it in your mouth and give it a twist as you pull it out. And yeah, there's paint still on there. I mean, and if you're using these acrylics, I've never been sick from doing it, and I've done it. Not to great frequency. It's not something I look to do, but I know people do it. Tragic story of that, though. If you're ever a fan of old military watches, back in the day, the whole licking a paintbrush to put a fine point on it. In World War One, if you guys know who Madame Curie is, a individual who worked heavily in radiation, that kind of thing, radiology. When they discovered the radioactive element, it was not really fully understand the health properties, and people thought, hey, radium, it's really good for you. It has health properties, because some people would feel better and stuff like that, and you didn't understand how a rock being close to you for a while could kill you. And it also glowed in nature. Radium did. So what they did, because of trench warfare, lighting up your flashlight and looking at your watch, not a good idea in the military. And if you're like, well, how do you know? I happen to be in the military, and we always had glow watches. We didn't wear a lot of digital that would light up, that kind of stuff. You try to stay away from that, because in a combat-like situation, it's why soldiers nowadays tend to, if you ever wonder why, well, I've got an uncle who's in the military and he dips and it's gross. A lot of soldiers get into the habit of chewing tobacco because if you light a cigarette, a sniper can see you from very far away, and the cigarette's in your mouth. So if they shoot where the butt is, it's going to go in your face. So, but anyways, going back to the whole radium thing, they would paint radium onto watch dials, on watch faces, because it would glow, so soldier could look at his watch at night and see what time it was. And how they were able to do this, this wasn't really a machine age. So what they would do is they have a bunch of, we're in the middle of a war, so there's a lot of young ladies who would be watch face dial painters. And they would have these individuals just sitting at a desk with a bunch of watch faces, and they would, paint their brush and then mark all the, and tragically what happened is they would lick their brush each time, it was radium. It was radioactive. And so after a while, they started getting, radioactive poisoning. And a lot of them died. And it's one of those things, it's one of the many things that is the reason why we have the FDA and that kind of stuff today, is because, if you ask the people who own those companies, hey, your product or whatever is killing these people, they're going, no, it doesn't. It's totally safe. It's not, that's, and so it's good to have an outside secondhand. But anyways, so now I've switched over to these tiles. These are stairwells. These are from Fat Dragon Games. They have the if you can see that little knob there, that's the locking system. It's a great set. It's Printable Scenery has a set that I think they call theirs Rampage. And then Fat Dragon Games calls it Dragon Lock. Now, what's really cool about dungeon tiles in the world of dungeon tiles, kind of going back to big business and everybody's out to make a buck and don't really care. What's really cool about the D&D tabletop RPG world is these guys who are making these expensive sets of you go to a place like Dwarven Forge, I believe, is one of they already have the set and you buy it and you pay for it. That set will cost you for a big dungeon could cost you thousands of dollars. Now, nothing wrong with that. I mean, some people are just not into I don't want to paint, I don't want to. But for the price of an Ender 3, a 3D printer, and if you look over my shoulder here, see I have 2 Ender 3s and 2 Photons. I'm not made of money. It's over time. $200 here, Ender 3. $200 here, Ender 3. $200 here, Photon. $200. That's how much those cost. Is $200 roughly each. A roll of filament. These boxes that I'm using are actually repurposed filament boxes. That's what they come in. A roll of filament is $20. You would be very surprised of what you could do with a single roll of FDM filament. And there is an amazing support group in 3D printing for dungeon tiles. Tom Tullis for Dragon. Again, I'm talking about him, but this is not a sponsored anything. Just like the guy, like the products. He's taught me a lot just from, he doesn't know it, but a lot of the questions. I bought an Ender 3 simply because of he answered every question I had before I bought one. And I don't have special, this is the pro version, I bought base models, and I just learned to use them. That was it. A lot of trial and error. It's not overly difficult. I have rebuilt both of my Ender 3s. Seriously rebuilt them. We're talking change the hot end. I have changed out the casters. I've changed out the fans. I've changed out belts. I've changed out... and then I've done a lot of modifications to them. They're not things that I went to my shop that I have and machined parts. Everything was a kit that I bought. And they're, again, extremely cost effective for... to give you an idea, if you look at Instagram, see how much stuff I have. I had my parents over this weekend. And my dad looking at my collection. He hasn't been over my house in a year at least. Looking at all my stuff goes, how in the world, how much does this all cost? $60,000, whatever. No idea. And he doesn't, my dad's a hot rodder, a dragster guy. He sees a motor and, it's a very expensive sport. And I was honest with him. I've spent a couple $1,000s. It's not, but this is my collection over years that and he didn't believe it. He's just like, well, it's got to be, 60 or whatever, $1,000. Maybe it's worth that, but it's because I made it all. I took, spools of filament and took files that somebody gave me or that I bought or, yada, 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 and printed them and then painted them. And that's the thing. Like, that's how you get, these huge, like, these guys who have huge dungeons. Now, I do know there's guys out there who go out and, buy every single line that comes out from Dwarven Forge. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, if I had money to burn, I'd still probably make this stuff. I love it. I love making stuff. But it's just more fun, too, because I don't just make tiles. There's a ton of stuff. Like, I've got decor in my house. I've got, if you guys have followed me, I've done, like, a whole bunch of Zelda stuff. So I have Majora's Mask, a life-size Majora's Mask. I have life-size, a bunch of stuff from Skyrim. So Dragon Priest Mask, that kind of stuff. So what we're doing here, I'm trying to get all the tiles and the floors done first. And then we'll go on to the walls. But right now what I'm doing is, this is another Fat Dragon Games. And they're really cool. They get this little tab here. And you can just pull out the actual gate. So the gate can be open, closed, whatever. And these sets, by the way, from Fat Dragon Games, you'll get like, it'll have like 7 or 8 sculpts. Sometimes more, maybe up to 20. And it's like $20. Between $20, $30, depending on what it is. I think the castle set is everything you need to do to build a giant castle. I think that was like 20 or 30. Same thing with a tower. But again, extremely. You can do it as much as you want. To give you a price comparison, the tower that just came out from Wizards of the Coast. Again, a company that I highly love. I have a ton of their miniatures, and by a ton, I mean it's a disease. You can buy those sets. You can buy the tower, and I think it's like $200 or $300, and it's because it's cast resin or whatever they print it in or make it out of. I did buy the bridge that they came out with a short while ago. I've also 3D printed like 3 bridges. In the Army, I was an engineer, and I have a thing with bridges. It's unnaturally unhealthy, but I love bridges. You put out a bridge, and I want to build it, buy it, do stuff with it. Yeah. So I'm just removing the gates because, again, I want to get these, and we're going to be painting the gates a different color anyways because they're going to be metallic with rust into them. And again, it's a light dab. It's not there. I don't even need a brush. It's a quick move. You can still see the black in there. Totally fine. Who gives a crap? But again, that's why I print in black. I don't have to spray paint this. I don't have to paint them all black. It just takes out a step for me. When you 3D print stuff, at least in FDM, resin's another game. And I don't really want to get into that. We can do that some other time if I'm printing resin. And I have some stuff that I can talk about resin-wise. So there you go. That's just the first coat. When it dries, which is only a couple seconds, because it's acrylic, it's quick. You get through stuff real fast, and it looks good. It doesn't require, and that's the thing. I'm using this light brush. I'm not putting a ton of paint on it over and over and over again, and I'm just dabbing it on. You can see all the cracks. You can see the detail. And again, 3D printed. This isn't like a highly detailed one of these. Granted, one wall, one of these could take, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours if you print them one at a time. Now, what I used to do to build dungeons is, again, I know my printers though. I know when they're behaving and when they're not. And if you're like, well, JP, why are you talking about behaving? They're children. And they're my children, and they all have names. Feely, Keely, Balwin, and Dwalwin. My computer's Gandalf, and my laser engraver is Thorin Oakenshield. Anyways, you know how these things work. Well, this. I need to tune this up. I need to re-level the bed. I need to do this or do that. Once you kind of have a solid grasp of what you can do on it. When I first got them, I was trying to print 12 tiles at once on a print bed. That is the most you can fit on an Ender 3. Trust me on that. And I'm talking like a 2x2, one of these. Now, Did I succeed? Sometimes, yes. But I failed also a whole lot. And I found that if I'm trying to print in mass scale, nine is the magic number. 9 ring rates, 9 tiles at a time, 2 by 2, and you'll get almost always a success rate. I again do like to use rafts when I do these tiles, because here's the thing: when you're printing that many tiles, if one shifts, if one pops off of your print bed, the whole thing's failed. It's gonna make, you're gonna have a bad time. So a raft will cut down on that and prevent it heavily. And like I said, I'm not saying you're not wasting material. You're gonna throw the raft away. But for me, it's like buying insurance. I mean, sure, I don't expect to, have a tree fall on my house. But there's a big tree behind my house. It could fall on any time. So it's good to have some sort of, in case of this. And like I said, I've had far more success since I started always doing a raft than I've had when I didn't use a raft. I used to have failed prints all the time. And when I did like I said, I have 2 printers. You don't need 2 printers. You don't need 4 printers. I have the photons to do miniatures. I have the FDM, the Ender 3s to do my terrain. If you're looking to, if you're like I was a kid, as a kid I always imagined, this product will do everything and I'll be able to, whatever, fly to the moon because of this, because I saw it in a cartoon or something. You got to be realistic. You got to understand the limitations of your machines. A 3D printer, an Ender 3, yes, it can make miniatures. Yes, it can make even decent miniatures. But it's never going to look as good as a resin printer, like when it comes to miniatures. And you could buy a resin printer, but there's a lot of things that come with resin. It's toxic to handle. You gotta have you can't really see it, but there's a filtration system behind both of those going out a window. And I had to design and build that. The reason all this stuff is here is it's the curing station. You have to wash all your resin prints in isopropyl alcohol for the most part, and you have to then wash them off in water, and then you have to cure them under a UV light. Again, it's an exchange for one type of the other. FDM, which is the Crealities, the Ender 3s, the other machines that do the FDM, it looks like weed whacker wire. Great at printing massive, big things, but they are not really, like I said, doing small miniatures. If you're looking to build an undead army, and I mentioned that just because I recently finished one, I did 350 to 400 miniatures. Never in a million years would I have been able to do that with done it as well, based on the sculpts that I had. They wouldn't have the detail. It looked like, sure, it looks like it a little bit from a distance, but you want your stuff to look good up close too. If you're taking pictures of it, that kind of thing. And again, the reason why I'm painting like this is I painted the tabletop levels, what I call it. And I do see that my face looks red through the blinds. I'm not actually red. I've got a window right here, and the light is just coming through. I'll eventually probably get blackout curtains and put those up there. So bear with me. I'm scratching all the paint off my fingers because, like I said, it will build up quite a coating, and it's almost like you dipped your fingers in wax like 10 times. So far, that's the floors. And I've got all the walls still remaining, I think, for the most part. Yeah, so we just got the turret walls. Oh, there's another piece that I missed. So we'll get these done, then we'll get the floors out of the way. And we'll move on to... That floor just does not want to get painted. Come here. Alrighty. Again, quick, painless, easy. So, I'm going to move on to the brush so I can let my fingers get some of that crud off of it for a bit. So for a brush, what I'm looking for, I want something that's probably about a ½ inch. I mean, you could theoretically use something like this, like about an inch. I don't really feel the need for something that big. Again, it's your own prerogative. Let me get my mouse out of here so we can get some more stuff going. So again, we're going to do the light gray. And it just says gray, but it's a lighter color of gray. And this is where dry brushing comes in. And by the way, I do these big swatches of everything at once and then everything again. I try to do everything in one color, one go, simply because if you do that, you're not going. If I had started with both these paints in the trough at the beginning, by the time I got to the light gray, it would probably be already drying up a little bit. It's just, you don't want that. And I don't want to refill the dark gray because I will have to eventually to do the walls. So I'm fine with the little bit that's left in there drying out a little bit. That's fine because I'm going to add in some more when we do the other one. So all we do for dry brushing in here, I will actually put this up here so you guys can see how I do this. We'll go as much Bob Ross as we can. Sorry, I can't talk like him though. That man's a wizard. Alright, so I just wait till the brush. Now this is going to be more of a wet than totally dry brushing. And I just get a little bit, and so I don't know if you can see. It now gives it that stone look. You can see the dark gray, you can see the black, you can see the light. It gives it a stone look to it. You have now 3 colors on one tile with minimum amount of effort. Again, it's a quick, and again, I can do this quick. That's another one done. Just boom. And you can start knocking them out. And it's one of those things that when I'm painting tiles, I put a movie on. I am done halfway into the movie. It is even like with the big. If you ever see me do layouts of things I want to paint, if I'm doing tiles, half of my table I can paint in a single sitting, in a couple hours, in an hour tops. It is quick. And I mean, we're already at about the hour mark, but I've been talking a lot and, just kind of trying to show. This is why I like keeping, this is another thing about Rafts. If I keep them on there, I can get stuff done quick. I don't have to keep on loading my brush up. And here's the thing too. All these are going to look uniquely different. They're not going to look the exact same. And then, so I'm done with the raft, right? I don't need any more colors. Boom, they just pop off. Put them in the done pile. And then you can just throw away the raft. And again, this is what the raft looks like. It's just a piece of plastic that it does add about an hour or 2 to your print time. But like I said, if you've ever had a failure, if you're a 3D printer out there, would you rather have an hour or 2 added to your print time or a complete failure of a 2-day print? Because I can tell you right now, I've had some 2-day prints fail on me halfway or a day in, and you're gonna have a bad time. So I imagine we'll see in how far we get in the next 7 minutes with the dry brushing. You can see how fast I'm just. I see on the camera it's a little bit splotch of these, so don't want to go too fast so you guys can't see it. Now here's something too. You don't have to stop at this step. I could go in with a territorial beige and hit these up to give it another color in there as like a sand or a dirt on. I don't really want to for these because I know these floors are going to be not really seen, to be honest. I printed the floors because they're going to provide structure to my model, the build, the castle. They're not going to really be seen except for the top layer. But if you've ever looked at the actual castle Strahd castle, it seems to all be one color anyways, like a white granite kind of look. So this fits our purpose. Again, and here's the thing. I'm, again, being a traditional paint on this, I don't always do this. I only do this with my traditional set in the two-tone with the black. But you could go as detailed as you want. It's, again, I have thousands of these. When you own a 3D printer or a couple of them, and you own tons of files, and here's the thing, Thingiverse is free. You don't have to go to Printable Scenery. You don't have to go to Fat Dragon Games. You can build a massive D&D collection totally for free. It's you wouldn't believe how many things are out there. Alrighty. Get those out of there. Alright. If you're wondering too, like, well, you're touching them while they're still wet. Again, I'm only putting so much light paint on, it's not gonna matter. That's what's great about acrylics. I mean, it's not like a lacquer where it's drying almost instantaneous, but by the time you get to the end of this, all the other stuff's dry. Now, what I do, I said haha. What I often do after I paint all these is I do have a layout table in my studio. And for instance, what I'm doing right here is I will do a layout afterwards to let things sit for a day. Doesn't need a day, it doesn't need an hour, but I would set it out like that, one across the other, just allow everything to have a full dry time. But it's not really super necessary. Man, I don't know if you guys are able to see that better. Let's get a little more light. Oh, we don't need as much light then. Alright, we are already coming close to the end of the floors. And again, if you guys let me know in the comments if there's something you want me to cover, talk about, questions, remind me that I'm an idiot. I mean, that's whatever. There's no, what I love about, D&D, tabletop games, and like that, there's no one way to do it. You can do it however you want. You don't have to have you don't have to own a single miniature. You don't even have to own dice anymore. You got systems like D&D Beyond that are completely free, which are amazing. Again, not a paid advertisement for D&D Beyond. But you can run an entire game out of there, not have to buy a thing, make everything on your own, and it does it makes, most of it easy. Now, for me, I like investing in, the game. Miniatures and terrain is just, for me, that's my hobby before. But, buying the books online through D&D Beyond allows me to use their monsters and that kind of stuff. It's a great, great tool. So, alright, I'm just going to hold this little guy here so I can get all these at once. Boom. That's our floors. Like poker chips. Alright. Now we're getting close to the end of to everything but the walls. The walls should be pretty easy. Again, it's a light brushing. I'm not trying to paint this whole thing a specific color. So you want to take a look at that. You can see the black, you can see the pock marks, you can see the lighter white. It gives it a full good coloring. Now, again, you can do detail work and paint individual bricks to, really give it an accented look. That is awesome. But when you're painting, 2-3 weeks worth of 3D printings, it's not, for me, that's not a good use of my time. I've got my to print list is still quite a bit. I have a giant tower that I still need to paint that I do want to do the individual bricks a little bit on it. So I will rather spend the time on that than on my dungeon tiles. Again, just using the rag, getting a little bit of excess paint off my brush, and moving right along. Alright, and we are almost halfway done, guys. It's only been an hour. Again, here's the thing, you can have a ton of D&D stuff, tons of terrain. You don't want to be sitting here for 8 hours trying to paint stuff. Now, have I done it? Absolutely. But you can set aside once or twice during a week. If you know what you're doing, you can be quick about it. 2 hours, you should be able to get a huge amount of stuff done. And have it at good detail level. This is not a talent-based thing. This is a skill-based thing. It's not once you know how to do it, anybody can do it. I can teach anybody how to speed paint. Now miniatures takes practice. Don't get me wrong. Like I still, if I paint eyes, you'll laugh at me. My miniatures are terrible. I don't like to paint eyes at all. I generally just blank out the face and then use a wash to try and give it a little bit of a face to it. But I don't do eyes. Now I can get better at it. There's some techniques. Again, it's all techniques. It's not You know, the skilled people are the ones who find out how to do it. It's the talented people, the ones who find a way to do it. It's the skilled people who find out, hey, I saw that guy do that, you know, and then you just copy it. It's not plagiarism if you copy a technique. All right. Actually, I'll hit that top. That looks a little bit dark. As you can see, I'm just going around the model, giving it a couple brush strokes in one or two directions, and that's it. All right. Before we switch on to the gates, I'm going to put a little bit more light in here. As it is now 8 o'clock, the sun is now going down, and so I got to change up the lighting a little bit here. Cool. Now bear with me one sec. We'll get some lights in here. All right. Now we're going to move on to doing the gates really quick, just because I want to get all this stuff out of here so I can work just on the walls. So what we're going to do with the gates, I want to lay them all out. There should be 6 of them. Something always good to do, make sure if you're painting a certain thing, you want to have make sure you have as many, you know, you've got the right number. All right. So I'm not going to even switch brushes. I'm going to give the brush a light white, like a little bit washing. So it doesn't need to be perfectly dry. Now, looking at this is a great model. I don't know if you guys can see. Come on, focus. You guys can see the rivets on that. It's a great bit of detail, and I want that detail to show through. The tab is a great place to hold on to. And so, again, I'm wiping excess off here. I don't want to be heavily coated. So there's just one side. All the difference, right? Now I just got to get the other side. Again, I'm going to wash a little bit off the brush. It doesn't need to be... You're not painting a car. You don't need to have every single nook and cranny completely crammed with color. And we'll go back and hit those tabs in a second. Alright. Now what I'm going to do, trying to do in the order of what I painted, I'm just going to hit those tabs really quick. By doing it backwards, or going through again, it's giving me enough time to try and handle the gates a little bit more without them being too wet. Again, if you're not overloading them, you can almost always handle them after if you've got a few things. You can go back, touch a miniature or something like that. You do want to be careful with something that you could probably see with what's going on with my hands right now. I am covered in paint. You can't really see it too much because it's gray and silver, but my hands are getting wet paint on it. If I were to be painting a number of things, other miniatures, and I was not using the same colors, I could easily paint transfer onto those miniatures, which you really don't want to do. If you were really trying to do some real detail work and you got to the dry brushing stage and you touch something and you transfer a bunch of silver or something over to it, you almost got to repaint the whole thing black and start over. So that's one thing to be very considerate of. I don't paint miniatures while I'm painting terrain for that very reason, is because terrain painting is a messy ordeal for me. And I'm totally okay with that, but when I do miniatures, I try to be as careful as possible. All right. So again, we've got these crates, and they will be. I mean, that looks, almost contrasting enough, but I want to have more. As you can see, I was able to touch that tab. I just recently painted it, and nothing came up. So what I'm going to do here, add a little bit of that orange. Again, I'm using the same brush. I did clean it off a little bit. And all we do here is, again, the dry brushing technique. I take a little bit off, and I just hit it in areas. Come on, focus. Focus. And you can see what I'm talking about. That looks rusted, in areas. I'm not looking, again, I'm not trying to get the whole thing. Show a little bit of metal through. So, again, it tells a little bit of a story on its own when you do that. Maybe water splashed on it from one area back in the day or something like that, and that's where it's rusting. That kind of thing. And you can do more to it. I have done this in the past. I will not do it with this, but if I was doing something like this, I might go in and do all the I got a little bit more than I wanted. You can do that too. If you're dry brushing, you can wipe a little bit off after giving it a hit. You could do, if you have the patience and you really want stuff to stand out, give it more detail. Nothing gives more detail than big contrasts. And how can you do some big contrasts on this? Go through and paint all the rivets bronze. Again, it's a small piece. It's something that is going to be on my table in a big way, but it's not going to be, something that the rust is enough. The players can see the rust from the table. They probably, unless they're holding the piece in their hands, they would not probably notice the rivets. And again, it's for me, it's an unnecessary, but there are times, for instance, I believe here for this actual building, for this actual project, I did some pieces earlier. You can see I actually did the screws or the nails into the wood, and it's a quick process if you know what you're doing. Just get a pointed brush, give it a good dab of paint, and just, it's like you're a woodpecker just going down the line. But it's sometimes it's unnecessary. And so this is something too to really try out. Try experimenting colors on top of colors. I mean, those grates now, I mean, even from the distance, from me looking at the camera up top, looking down, those look rusted from a distance. You know, up close, they look good. I mean, you can see the flash of the metal, but at the same time, you can see the orange in there too. It's all down to that dry brushing. I tell you, dry brushing will take you to the next level of work. Not saying that, you know, you get that technique down, you're gonna win a painting competition. You know, some of those guys with airbrushes are straight up ninjas, but it will take your stuff to the next level. And again, for me, simply trying to have, you know, stuff to my standard, I think it does a great job. So, here's what I'm going to do. Since we are halfway through, we've got everything painted, I'm going to start switching stuff over. We don't need the orange and the silver anymore. Just start getting these pieces so I can use the box to transport them, the completed stuff. And this is something I do for all of my miniatures. Miniatures, terrain, I use these boxes from Hatchbox because if you're 3D printing as much as I am, you can build a castle of these things. You'll have a ton of them. Like I said, it's like a $20 for a box, or one roll of filament. Actually, you know what? Let's put these together. So all together, solid piece. And what's really cool about Hatchbox boxes, if you do 3D printing, that I discovered, is that it will hold exactly 16 tiles across perfectly. Just works out that way. So if you are looking to build a dungeon, you could actually double stack them. And what I mean by double stack is flip one upside down and put it on top of the other like that. You can get 32 in there. Then you can actually put flat tiles on top of it. You wouldn't believe how many tiles you could fit into a Hatchbox box. When I do dungeon layouts, when I'm building a dungeon for a game, and I'm trying to keep parts separated, so when I go to build it, I use a Hatchbox box, and I'll separate them, label them, you know, floor 1, floor 2, and put everything in there. You can build a whole dungeon and have it in a couple boxes, and so it's all separated, so you're not, it's like you're setting up your own Lego set, and you're putting all the pieces you want in there. Alright, simple enough, right? I mean, there we go. Everything fit in that box that we just painted. And if you're wondering, too, what kind of filament I use, there you go. Hatchbox PLA, 1.75 millimeter. It's what runs through the Ender 3 Works like a dream. It is, it's my go-to filament. It's outstanding. Again, not advertised by Hatchbox. If I like something, I like what they do, I'll mention it. Hatchbox, you already watch here. You could throw me a couple rolls though. I won't turn them down. Alright. So we're going to work on the medium tower now. Don't need our brush. Throw it in there. And it looks like we still got some paint here. So we're just going to go right back into it. And again, the reason why I like to use this kind of brush is I'm getting that mortar look still in the grooves. We might actually need to refreshen up our paint here. Now, if you saw what I'm doing, you can also do, for the outside, I want to do a dab. And if right now you're thinking dab, like as in dabbing, I want to push you off of a ledge. But on the inside, again, not going to probably be seen by many of the players unless I pull the, they're on that floor or something like that. And I don't really care too much about the detail work, but although it's still not bad. So again, I just do a simple swipe method. Boom. How fast was that? Easy enough. This is something you could almost assembly line do. It's quick, painless. If you notice, I'm dabbing a little bit of paint off before I put it on. It's because if you load up your object, whatever you're painting, your piece, with paint, you don't get that fast dry time that results, and so you can handle it. You're going to start getting smudges. That's why I'm trying to be as careful as possible when I'm putting them away, to touch it as little as possible in certain areas, just because I could wipe a bunch of paint off. It needs a little bit of time to build up on there. Alrighty. Moving right along. Now again, this is a tedious process, guys. It's not, I mean, there's a lot of things that are really, I don't want to say adventurous or whatever like that when you're painting, but there's a lot of really fun parts where, I mean, I love the whole process of painting, period. It's a process, though. You know, you're going to have the, you know, this is prep work and it's tedious and stupid and I hate it. And, you know, and then you're going to have the stuff where you're doing like high detail work that really makes the part shine and you're like, yeah, that's awesome. You're going to have all of it. For me, this is the most tedious of building huge dungeons. Getting those big base coats on. Anytime that, you know, people, how do you do it? How do you get, yeah, it's like, painting is like, for models at least, especially, you know, tabletop terrain, dungeons, it's like, here's how I always put it when I'm trying to explain how I do it to other people. You want to paint like you're putting your clothes on. And what I mean by that is you got to paint the lower level first, so your base coat, which in this case is black. You got your primer. That's the undercoat. That's the thing that's going to show through the most. And then you've got after you've got your primer, you've got your base coat, which in this case is our pewter gray, our regular, you know, deep or dark gray. And then you've got the dry brushing, which would be like your detail work, your accent work. So using the whole metaphor of getting dressed, you've got your primer, your black, which is your underwear. You you want to show as little as much as possible of that, generally, if that makes sense to you. Then you've got your base color, you know, that's, you know, your undershirt, your pants, hopefully. And then you've got your dry brushing. It's your accent pieces. Those are your, you know, your watch, your bracelets, your jewelry, your attention getters. You know, if you're wearing an undershirt, then your dress shirt over it, your tie, your cufflinks, your whatever. And you just do that and you build on that. When you're doing miniatures, you want to do the exact same thing. Paint again, when I buy WizKids miniatures, let's just use WizKids, or Reaper. Let's use Reaper also, because they're two big brands that everybody has access to generally. And they come very similar. You know, they say they've got a primer on there. They've got, you know, ready to paint out of the box is usually what they say. That's great, but again, in my experience, what the primer they use, that light color, does not take to paint as well as a dark color. And I don't mean that it doesn't, like, the paint rubs off. I mean that a dark color makes the primary base colors that you put onto it stand out better. Again, you get more detail work that shows through. You get you have to paint at different levels over and over again to get a miniature that color maybe to stand out as well as it would have if it was on a darker color. So, but then you go for the big stuff first. What I like to do is like if the miniature is wearing like a robe, or we're talking like an adventure miniature, like not like a monster that, you know, is like 3 or 4 colors and that's it. Something that's going to have a lot of detail work and stuff like that. I go for the big stuff first, but I also go for the stuff that I can cover up later down the road. I can hide my crimes, as Adam Savage says. If you're painting, like, I'm never going to paint like sword hilts and belts and buckles and all that stuff first. Just, that is a bad idea. Sword hilt, maybe. It's in their hand. You could get away with it a little bit, but I try to leave that after I painted their hands. I want to go for the solid colors. I want to paint their undershirts, their pants, their boots, the big colors, and then go in and do the, dry brushing of another tone. So two-toning it. So that'll make like the ripples in their pants stand out. And how you do two-tone, honestly, I mean, somebody's going to probably tell me you're wrong, and but how I do it, what I recommend, pick a dark color. It's exactly what I'm doing right now. I picked a dark color, and I put a lighter dry brush color on top of it. It will make things stand out. If you have, and that's the thing too, if you paint something only one color, you're not, there's nothing wrong with it, but you're not taking into account nature. Nothing in nature is one solid color generally. Even like, let's say you're walking down the street and you see a car. Car is painted one color. When they put it in this spray booth, they use candy apple red, and that was it, and it's all one color. But it really isn't, because if you're looking at that car at that moment, unless even if it's in a garage, the light, no matter how dim or heavy it is going to show through, and it's going to highlight parts of that car and parts of that paint job. So that is the reason why you do two tones. You dry brush a lighter tone on top of it, because it's going to hide the heavier, the darker areas are not going to get touched by the brush as much, depending on how much pressure, and again, that comes with practice. And so you're going to get that more realistic or more accented look by doing that. It just looks cool too. I mean, the more color, the better, in my opinion. I mean, don't get me wrong, you gotta have a point where you say, no, I'm not gonna do it anymore. I do that with these dungeon tiles. When I first started out, I did, I think, 4 different colors of brick, and then did the 2 colors of gray. No, it's not worth it. I mean, in my opinion, for when you're trying to build a set that is sheerly massive. I mean, when you're trying to build something that you would take to an expo to show off, yeah, I want it to be all painted inside and out and have a ton of detail work and stuff like that. But brick walls are brick walls. I mean, again, if I was entering into an expo for a competition of like the biggest, yes, in that case, I would absolutely go to that extra mile. But for something that I use in my home game and that I show you guys, I'm going to paint it how I would paint it. We're moving through the paint pretty quick. So bear with me 1 sec, we'll get some more in here. We're only an hour and 35 minutes in, and we're almost done with the bigger set. We still got the smaller set, which again, they're smaller, but there's more of those. That tower is much larger. But I bet you we can get to it. I don't want to keep everybody out more than... But if we get to it, we'll get to it. You notice me flipping it around. Cool thing about these is they actually have a completely flat base. So you can tell if you've got it upside down. No point in painting the bottom. And again, you develop ways of painting on your own. You know what works for you. From the start of this, I've never painted a round like this that didn't have a floor to it. So if you've noticed, kind of my technique is I just set it on the towel, my rag here, and I use the natural arch to paint it. It works. It's less of me painting and touching and that kind of thing than. And what I mean by the turn is that this is one of the early prototypes that I was doing, and it has. This is my problem. It has this lip here, which is fine if it's connecting into a dungeon, but for a tower, I can't have multiples of those with that lip over it. That's just not going to give it the right aesthetic. So that's why I was looking for this set. And this set, both the small and big, again, Thingiverse, if you have a 3D printer, you do not need to go buy tons of terrain or anything like that. You really don't need to buy any. Thingiverse is a wonderful tool. I mean, the air filtration system I built on my photons, because resin's not something you want to breathe in. I 3D printed a bunch of the parts to it. I had a cousin who wanted to go as Jon Snow for Halloween last year, or the year before, or whatever. I don't remember anymore because COVID is the devil. And he wanted to have a sword that had the long claw wolf on the end of it. I 3D printed it in like an hour. Like, he's just like, hey, can you make me this? I'm like, pick it up in an hour. Like, it was just, it's one of those things that, I looked it up and found it and had it done in that short amount of time. It really makes it so you can, your imagination's your oyster. I'm still trying to learn how to design models. I've got a lot of design ideas for 3D printing. My background in the military is in history, so a lot of medieval stuff, and I would love to build, some medieval buildings that I have in mind. And now I'm not talking about redesigning, Notre Dame or, the Hagia Sophia or anything like that. I don't care about building accurate historical buildings. I want to build things that will be good on a D&D table or Pathfinder, insert your game here. For you, those of you guys watching, what I do plan on doing in the future, because normally Tuesdays, I'm working at this time because I work second shift, but I do think in the future we'll be doing a streaming on every Monday around this time. Is what I'm thinking of the plan is going to be, and then I'll be releasing videos as well that things that people have messaged me about, questions they've wanted to see, unboxing videos, stuff like that. So that's kind of the plan. But just trying to build up the what you guys are interested in seeing. Kind of what I was saying before with these models. You can be one of those ones that, you know, if Dragon, I'm not Dragon, if Dwarven Forge is what's, you know, right for you, it's what's right for you. You know, I'm not going to knock it. If you've got that kind of money, awesome. 3D printing, though, now, I mean, there's also the, you know, the introductory of this kind of hobby. If you're wanting to have terrain for your, you know, your worlds, is, you know, the crafting foam, the, you know, and don't get me wrong, those guys are amazing. I think DM Scotty, the Black Magic Craft guy, I can't remember his name. Wylock, those guys are amazing what they do. You know, they make pretty much stuff out of cereal boxes. I mean, it's a lot more than that. I'm not making light at all what they do. They're amazing artists. But here's the thing, like, I work 50 to 60 hours a week. And not only the painting of those things, if I built them, I'd have to build them plus then paint them. And it's now not saying that, you know, that's, again, if you've got the kind of time to build some of those, I'm working on a mountain right now out of foam. If it's the right medium for you or the project you're trying to do, I've 3D printed a mountain. That is one of the projects I have done. I think it came out rather well, but I wanted to have something more material for this one, so I decided to try something different and do something new. And I got a hot wire and, you know, that kind of thing, and I also have a tool shop, so it's, you know, one more thing to add to my repertoire of things I know how to do and things I want to experience. You know, if you can make that advance. But so to start out, you can build, again, cities, buildings, all that stuff rather inexpensively too, out of foam core and all, you know, a Mod Podge. For me, it's, I mean, I have a huge family, and just to use an example, my dad came over this weekend, and they're, you know, spinning my windmill that, you know, is literally held together by super glue, and it's one of those where I'm, you know, waiting for a moment where I'm going to be like, you know, hey, I'm going to have to fix that now, thanks. I've got 41 first cousins, 18 aunts and uncles. I got a big family. So it's not ideal for me to have something where, you know, fingernails are going to make an imprint or something like that. And don't get me wrong, I don't know. I know Mod Podge does a lot to seal in. I don't know if it makes it solid like plastic, but I'm also a complete klutz. I drop stuff all the time. So I don't know if it's the right way. I've dropped entire buildings before, and, you know, and I've had to super glue parts of them back on. So I don't know if that's the right out of durability standpoint. But again, like I said, if, you know, you're looking to make the investment into 3D printing, it does have a price tag to it at the beginning. You know, $200 a machine for FDM if you're looking to do terrain. If you're looking to do miniatures, again, it's around $200. For FDM, A roll of filament, like I said, roughly $20 to $25 depending. The price kind of fluctuates a little bit depending on who you get, when you get, if there's a shortage, if there's a, they kind of play around with that. But the solid thing about 3D printing is, for instance, right now, thanks to COVID, I'm working from home. So my office is 20 steps from my studio. I can set my 3D printers. I can hear from my office when they're done. Now, don't be wrong, the Ender 3 does not do like a notification beep when it's completed. What it does is you'll hear the gantry smack over. And if you've lived around a 3D printer long enough, you will know every single sound your 3D printer makes from a mile away. So it's just something I know, and also you get the general gist of the print times. Nice thing about the Photon is it actually has a countdown, and it's 100% accurate. It will be done at this time. Great, so you can plan your next build as long as nothing untoward goes on. If you notice, my Photons are not printing right now. I had a failed print and recently today, and I have to clean out the bed to fix that. It happens. It's not a big deal. You're going to have a failure if you're 3D printing. This is not an exact science. It works every time. No Ronco, set it and forget it. It's it takes a little bit of practice, takes a little bit of skill, and the cool thing about 3D printers is that everybody, you join a group on Facebook, join a group on, insert forums here. There's tons of guys making how-to videos, sending in pictures. This is what happens. This is what I kind of have my own in my head how-to manual of, if it makes this sound, it's this. If it makes it in. When I started out, I didn't have a clue. Did not know. No one in my family had a 3D printer. I didn't have anybody to ask. It's just something I stumbled through and learned from other people, or started, trying to fiddle around. Again, the fact that I was an Army engineer doesn't really help me a whole lot with 3D printing. Where it helped me is I'm not afraid to take something apart, put it back together, or change that apart or something like that. One of my changes, I accidentally cut a set of wires, and one of the things I had a problem with is that the build plate, one of the wires had moved back and forth so many times that it actually snapped off. In both cases, I soldered them back together. It was, you're gonna have things that come up, and they'll knock your machines out of commission. I had an issue was going on with a machine for the longest time where it would get to a certain height and then the print would shift. The extruder head would get stuck on the gantry and would actually pop a couple, and so it would then print offset. And it took me forever, because I was never at home when it happened. And I started figuring out, because it was at the time I was printing these mugs that I was in a Kickstarter, and I got a bunch of these mugs, and they would always, actually, you could see it on this mug. If you look in the skulls, there's a line going through them. And what actually had happened is it printed off the side, and what I did is I just snapped the whole thing in half and then put it back on where it should have been, and then super glued around it and try to hide it a little bit with Bondo. Sometimes there's no point. If it's still a good print, still works. Not everything I've done is absolutely perfect. And you're going to know that as a 3D printer. You'll be able to spot, this I can see, this is that one time that, it didn't stick all the way to the bed and part of it came up and warped. This is the, the building that misprinted on the side, and you'll find ways of fixing it. One of the things that I like to do, again, Ender 3s do not have when it runs out of filament, it literally runs out of filament. It'll just keep on printing, even though there's no more filament in it. And what I've done is I will, as accurately as I possibly can, measure where it ran out of filament. And then, using a different slicer, I will slice the model to that point, and then put a raft underneath it and have it print the remainder. And then I'll just put the two pieces together and super glue them on. And then try and hide it with Bondo. It's, again, not an exact science. It doesn't always work. There's some times where I'm just like, that won't work anymore. I have to redo it. But it's a live and let learn. There's some times where you're just like, well, that's a whole, waste, and I don't have to do that. I'm not going to do that anymore. There is a number of these tiles in my set that have the very top. It messed up on the last 20 minutes, and so it didn't print the top right. And so what I did, Bondo, just rubbed a line of Bondo over it, went in with a file and filed a little bit to make it look like there was a brick on top. Or I didn't. It just looks like part of it melted on the top. Who cares? Again, does it still fit the set? Does it, that's not a piece that I try and put prominently on my sets. But, if it works, it works. Corner pieces in a D&D set or a terrain building set, they take the most amount of time. Anything with two sets of walls. Obviously a floor piece could be, if you're just putting it completely by itself, is 2-3 minutes or whatever like that. No, sorry, it's like 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, depending on the levels and all that stuff. A single wall can be hour, maybe 2 hours, depending again. A corner, on the other hand, can be like 3 hours. So if you're printing, going back to what I was saying earlier, you're printing 9 walls, 9 corners, that might be a 20-hour print. And what I do with those sometimes is I don't even risk 9, because it's such a failure if you fail. So what I'll do is I'll print like 6. Take a little bit of that risk out of there. Everything with 3D printing is also a risk and reward. I did a while back a dragon skull that is massive, and it's hangs prominently in my wall, but it took like several weeks to make. And printing its base of its skull was, I think, a 3-day print, even at just 3% or at a 0.3 layer height. And it was one of those things where I had it print. I tried to print it actually once before, and it had failed. Not halfway through, but it was like 10, 15, 20 hours or something like that. And the problem with the skull, the base of it, was that its filament requirement was almost a complete roll. If I remember correctly, it was a complete roll. And so the problem is that now I either have to catch it, and this is before COVID and all that stuff, where I was working from my office, like from the office. I wasn't at home. And so when I set it, I had to let it go. I couldn't be home to change it. And so I had to have it. And so that failure could make a roll, now I have to, wait for the weekend, and now I can't print it for, days, or, you have to sometimes set it to, so you can be here if there's a problem. More than once in the night, I've heard a printer make a snapping noise, and I've jumped out of bed. Oh, what's going on? And, and it's nothing at all. And other times it's a complete failure. And the thing is that, if you're sitting here going, well, if it's a complete failure, then why'd you have to get up? Just let it go. It's going to keep on printing. You'll have a glob of wasted material by the time you wake up in the night. So you want to stop it the moment it happens. Sometimes you can fix it the moment it happens, but not always. One of the things I do with a warped bed when I have the problem of, the bed's not evenly heated or sides warping and it's coming up and it's not sticking anymore, is I will use painter's tape or masking tape to tape down that piece. That's again why I like Rafts, is that you can tape it always prints a little bit of like a quarter of an inch off, and you can tape down the raft and it will hold it to the bed at least as well as it can, and so you might actually have no problem at all with the piece, and you subverted what, I'm not saying it would have been a failure, but something that's noticeable. I have a very large warehouse I printed earlier on that my players have probably never even noticed it, but I see it every single time. I was printing the second story to it, and it warped on one of the balconies, and so there's like a quarter-inch gap in between when it lays. It won't lay flat. It's got this quarter-inch gap in the corner, and it's on the front of the building. And every single time I see it, it's one of those things where I want to reprint it, but at the same time, I have it. It still works. It's not perfect, but do I want to spend the money and the time? Because that piece was probably half a roll, so $10-15. And then there's also the painting. It had a lot of lattice work and stuff, so it took quite a bit of time of doing the detail work. And that's the thing, like when you're painting an individual building, some of those things, they've got so much great detail in them. I just finished this week, or last week, a set of a mimic house and a regular cottage, and I think it took me 8 hours to finish both of them. And normally I'm pretty quick about it, but I was painting two buildings at once, even with identical colors. But I think I used, between the two of them, like 12 different colors, layering on top of layering. And so it just, with that much surface area and that much detail work, it took forever. It felt like. So. But we're coming up on 2 hours here, so I don't think we're going to get to the other sets of the walls. But, that might have been a little ambitious to start off with, because, that's 2 boxes worth of stuff. But we did finish a vast majority of the models. We've only got this row left. And if you've noticed, you've been watching me loading up the paint. No paint really went to waste. And that's really the big goal I have too as a painter. So often, I don't know about everybody else, but so often for me, I overload. I have, I'm painting a miniature and I just want it like a droplet, and I end up, throwing away, a 16th of a bottle or something like that because I overestimated or it dried out. So that's why I try to develop the, paint in swaths and waves and that kind of thing. So. time marches on. Alright guys, we are nearing the end here. Kind of wish we had gotten the other stuff done, but I've been doing a lot of talking and trying to show, so I'm not as going as fast as I normally go. That's alright with me. It's just good to get this stuff done. I don't know about the rest of you guys. You know, hit me up in the comments, that kind of stuff. You know, how much do you guys have left on your 2 paint and your 2 build schedules? I know for me, I'm still, you know, got this castle going on that I haven't even really started putting together. I need to start working on that. But at the same time, I've been working on a personal project that I, from my more nerdier side, I'm a huge Ghostbuster fan, and I wanted to 3D print and build the entire equipment layout of everything that the Ghostbusters have, from stopping only at Ecto 1. I can't afford a Mercury car. Those things are like $120,000 for the Mercury hearse, but if you can find them. But I want to do like a proton pack and all that stuff with Arduinos and all that kind of stuff. So it's also something I'm doing. Probably not going to do that for a channel since there's so many builders who do that. But that's just something else that's been taking up my time that I want to. I've already printed the goggles and most of the ghost trap. I have to do some machine work in my shop to finish off some parts for the ghost trap. But yeah, that's another thing that's going on. But yeah, hit me up in the comments if you got, you know, some projects that you guys are looking to do. You know, what you're doing, what you're working on, and you know, give us. I mean, this is a new channel. I'm starting out. We had 1,000 followers on Instagram last I checked, or a little bit over. And I've had a lot of people ask me, you know, can you do tutorials? Can you do this? And I want to do it all. We want to, you know, build this to be as big as you guys can let us. And I've got some ideas for actually some. I used to write professionally back in the day. Doing some of that as well and releasing some stuff maybe on Kickstarter or Patreon. So let us know, you know, give us a like, subscribe. Like I said, I think I'm going to do a annual every Monday, I think around 7, 8, somewhere like that. We still got to figure that out. But we'll do like a live stream, either painting something or doing a D&D tutorial or set out something like that. Maybe not exactly D&D, but tabletop gaming related. And we can go from there. So like I said, give us a like, subscribe. If you know, got comments, let me know. You know, if you're a chatterbox idiot who doesn't seem to hold it together, that's fine. I'm ex-military. There's nothing you can say that'll bother me. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys. It's been a lot of fun. Again, let me know what you're looking to see, what we want to do. You know, if you think we did a good job, you know, let us know. It's your guys' channel. So let me know. And I will see you guys in the next one. We might actually be doing some more recent, more to come in the next couple days because I am on vacation this week, wonderfully. I'm working on shooting a lot of videos right now. I do think I have a brick coming this week, so we might do an unboxing live stream video. I'm working on some unboxing videos that I did in the past, just getting the stuff together to actually post it. So do that too. But you guys have a great rest of your day, and thanks for hanging with us.